All right, everybody. So I I'm not sure how long they're going to go. And I had less than 2 hours left of stream time because I only get 8 hours of streaming. So I decided to uh, restart the stream and start a part two. Now, we do have a question in there. And Nasty asked, and here it is she still out on bond as trial proceeds? And the question to that is, yes, she is out on bond. And she's been out on bond. I think she was only locked up for a couple of weeks before she got released. And then she bonded out. So she's been out on bond for a long time, actually, for the last like 4 years. But yes, she's out on bond, has been. She got picked up in Tennessee, was brought back to Georgia, and then I think she was in jail for about 2 weeks, and then the judge you see there on the bench in this trial set a $250,000 bond for her. So, because really the only evidence they have in this case, I mean, just so you understand the way the state's choosing to do this, and that's why they're like doing this long case, and they're like, you're going to have to look at all the pieces of the puzzle. So what they're doing right now is they're doing what I call the razzle dazzle, right? What I mean by that is they're bringing in all this physical evidence, and they're bringing in the crime scene text, and they're showing all the pictures that were taken, but really none of it as of right now. There's really nothing that ties her to it, because I mean, even if they can show there's blood in the house that would indicate he died in the house, you still got to show she's the one that did it. What this is all building towards is they're going to show that Winnie had to have died, and then they're going to try to box her in using phone records to show she was the only one at the residence. And then they're going to play the tape that they played in the opening statements yesterday, where she says, I guess they're going to do two things. They're going to bring Rusty on the stand, and they're going to confront him with the statement he gave. This is why I said this is going to be an interesting thing for those of you following the Ty Tucker case. If he was out, this is exactly what you would do with Todd O'Quinn to try to get a statement in that you want in under the hearsay exception of a prior inconsistent statement. Because what they're going to do is they're going to have Rusty come in. He's going to deny, as he's already done, and recant it. He's going to say, no, I didn't say that. I was under the influence. It's kind of like what's happening in the YSL trial, where all these people are recanting. And then what they get to do is they get to play that statement then. So now it becomes a matter of fact for the jury to determine, when was this witness telling the truth? When they said what they said to the police originally? And in this case, it's kind of like the YSL case. They're making the point that she was in Tennessee when she got picked up with Rusty. So the idea here is, hey, she's with Rusty. She's spending time with Rusty. And Rusty is, influenced by the time he spends with her. So a year later, he comes back and says, you know what? On second thought, that was never said. I was under an influence of sleeping pills. I imagined it, whatever. And he tries to recant it. On top of that, to bolster that statement, they will then be allowed to play the jail calls between her and Rusty while Rusty's on the stand, to where she says the famous line, you're going to hang me if you keep talking about that thing, which the state is going to ask the jury to determine that that thing is the statement that she allegedly made to him saying he's in the burn pit. So that's going to be the evidence. And then what they're going to show is the body's in the burn pit. They're going to give the jury something to say, hey, there's blood around the house, even though there's actually going to be witnesses the defense will put on to show that days before he disappeared, he was bit by an animal and bled and dripped blood all the way down to the basement. So it's not going to necessarily be, it's kind of like, it's evidence, but it's not really evidence of anything. So that's going to be it. That's what the jury's going to be left with. And they're going to show he died in the burn pit. And then what the defense is going to try to do is they're going to try to say, well, she could have made that statement. In other words, she could have told this guy he's in the burn pit, but that doesn't mean she did it. And that's the truth of the matter. they've got to have more than just this alleged statement she made to Rusty, her lover, that he's in the burn pit. Because that does not mean now the state's going to box in and say, well, phone records and everything says she's the only one at the house during whatever time they're going to believe this must have happened. But again, if the defense can raise doubt as to saying, hey, there's no way to know when this guy passed away. There's no way to know when all of this happened over the course of those few days. And if they can show that there's an explanation that somebody like the son, which is going to be the one that I think the defense is going to target in this case, and say the son did it, she found out about it, and she's covering for the son. That does not make her guilty now, and of anything, unless they can show she in some way acted doing something to try to cover up for him. Then she could be an accessory after the fact. But I don't believe she's charged with that. So the defense can say, hey, she's not charged with that in this case. And in fact, I believe double jeopardy would attach if she's found not guilty, because I think they had the opportunity to charge her for that. I'm pretty certain, not 100% certain on that, but the defense is going to say, hey, that's what she is. She might have had knowledge that something happened to her husband, but we're far from saying she's the one that did whatever happened. And that's why they presented those steps that said, hey, listen, there's a lot of reasonable doubt here. The state's going to tell you that she makes his statement, but we're going to tell you, how did she get the body out to the burn pit? And you heard that addressed yesterday in the opening statement. In my opinion, it was one of the least convincing parts of the opening statement, and that was the idea that she's a farm girl and she used whatever, to drag him. Well, if she did that, then why didn't blood show up on luminol testing? Because that's the problem. That's going to be that's why you heard today, and that's why it was significant, where they talked about the lack of blood found around the house. And the fact that in some areas the police didn't even test certain areas, and in other areas they did and nothing came up. So then the question is, how did she get the body out of the house to the burn pit? And where's all the blood? Because if this guy was shot, he's pouring blood out somewhere, and if she's dragging him, there's going to be blood on different places in the house. Now, the obvious implication that you heard yesterday, or maybe it was earlier today, when one of the officers, first responders, talked about when they arrived on the scene, they smelled cleaning supplies and bleach. The implication there is that somebody was fast at work cleaning stuff up. But I mean, look, this is the case you're going to have, and that's why, again, if the jury follows the law and looks at those stair steps and says, is there doubt here? Can you say beyond a reasonable doubt she's the one? The defense is banking on the fact that if the jury follows the law and walks up those steps and says, well, I can't say she's the one. I can't say for certain that she's the one who did this. And that's kind of where we're at right now with this. It's going to be an interesting case because, again, you're going to get some jurors back there who it may be enough. But I think this case right now, for me, and we'll see how it is as it pans out, you're lacking a motive. Again, like I said, one of the arguments the defense is going to make is why would she do this? And one idea was, well, hey, maybe she wants to move this guy out and move her boyfriend in. Yeah, but financially, it was a disaster for her. So that's a problem. Let's see here. Yanasti says, what about the time she said he was on the burn pile before her son found or after? Well, that's unclear, Yanasti, because the problem with that is nobody knows who knew what when, right? That would have been before that conversation occurred, before the body was found or before authorities were notified. But that doesn't mean that if her son calls this, that she wouldn't have said, hey, he's no longer here. He's on the burn pile. Holy cow. But it also doesn't look good that she's saying on a jail phone call, you're going to hang me. So why would it hang you if you didn't do anything? So again, that's going to be the way that's why they're crafting the case the way they are, because if you put in all the stuff surrounding it and you tie everything in and you hone everything in and then you go, okay, now that is the piece that seals it beyond a reasonable doubt. Everyone says, okay, she did it. We don't know exactly how. And that's the thing. You don't have to know exactly how she did it. You just have to know that she did it. No doubt that she did it. The rest is like, well, you're never going to pin down certain details. But if the defense, which is what they're honing to do here, is to point out and say, listen, too much, he would have been too heavy to get the body down. There's no way she would have been able to get him to the burn pit. There's no motive. It makes no sense why she would do this. On top of that, you've got maybe I don't know, maybe the defense will have something that they can present in terms of maybe they can have a counterbalancing alibi argument. But we'll see. It's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting because, it's one of these cases that, it's amazing how thin the evidence is, but it's really amazing how compelling that one piece of evidence is. Because again, once you start fleshing it out and breaking that statement down, it really doesn't look good. It really doesn't. It's a really, 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 really bad situation for her. And it's unfortunate she would say something so stupid on a jail phone call. And when you think about it, they charged her based on this statement that they intended to enter as a prior inconsistent statement. It's the only way they would get it in. I mean, and that without the bolstering recording, state may have had a problem, but the bolstering recording that bolsters that statement and what they meant by it, and bolsters whether it was said or not. It's going to be interesting. Like I said, this is why I'm following this case, because I think this is one of those cases where good lawyering could win this case. But it's going to require good lawyering, and it's going to require them to come in and put forth some evidence to suggest that, hey, the son is the more likely individual to have done this. And then the other stuff kicks in. The other doubts will kick in with that. Now, of course, you've also got the presumption of innocence. So then the question is that recording alone enough to overcome the presumption of innocence? Is there an ability to raise questions as to what she was speaking about in that recording? And perhaps they will, to which then, if there is doubt, if there is something that's unknown and it can't be rectified, you have to then, based on the presumption of innocence, you would then break in the favor of her and presume she's innocent, and presume an explanation that goes towards her innocence and not towards her guilt. But again, it seems we're going to have to wait a little bit on this. So, like I said, I still cannot imagine how we're going to be sitting here for, another, I don't know, 3.5 weeks. I mean, it just seems unthinkable, but maybe that's where we're going to be at. I mean, this seems like a pretty simple case. It seems to be like, it's a simple case for the jury. It seems to me if I was the defense, I would be stipulating certain things to keep this a lean case and keep it really targeted so that the jury can really target in and say, do we believe Rusty now or do we believe Rusty then? And do we think there's any credibility to this? And then the defense can get to work on chipping away based on the fact that we don't know where the killing occurred. We don't know when the killing occurred. We don't know. Obviously, then it raises question. If you can't say when or where it happened, then, I mean, that's a problem. Then you get into the idea of, okay, and the other thing is there an actual explanation for why Rusty would have said what he said to the police? And we're finding all that out because I'm sure it's going to get fleshed out on cross-examination. And these attorneys have been working on this case for, I think they said 6 or maybe 5 years or 6 years, or I think it's been 6 years. This happened in 2018. So, like I said, this is a case that's going to be that's going to be interesting. It's going to be a tough one, or maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe if the state presents everything in the way they're going to, it may not be as tough as we think, because I guess it's going to come down to, do you believe she confessed, and do you believe she did this? And do you believe the state has proof beyond a reasonable doubt that she did? And right now, you know, I'm not convinced at this point based on what I've seen. But of course, we've only seen a couple of witnesses in the first 4 days. And of course, I've heard the opening statement that's told me, okay, this is our linchpin piece of evidence. There's no DNA, there's no physical evidence. There's just a statement, a prior inconsistent statement that's going to be brought in against the witness who's going to tell you this didn't happen. And then they're going to, um, bring in that same testimony a jailhouse phone call. He says, okay, what was she talking about when she said that? And he's going to provide an explanation, and we're going to hear it, and the jury's going to have to determine, is that enough? Coupled with whatever they bring in from the investigation, is that enough to say beyond a reasonable doubt she did this? Or is it possible that she might have had knowledge that this happened, but that another family member did this? And given the fact that this sounds like there is some dysfunction, quite a bit of dysfunction within this family, you know, there very well could be a lot of doubt left in the jury's mind at the end of this case and at the end of the trial. So we shall see. But with that said, guys, it looks like it's 3:18. They're running a little late. They've been running late on these breaks. This is another reason why I started the stream late restarted the stream, because I was worried that the breaks would run late and the court would run late, and then we're trying to restart a stream with 15 minutes of court left, which would be ridiculous. So in this case, we've got a part 2 going. We'll see what happens here. Sometimes I know in past trials I've covered out of Georgia, they've run late. They've utilized the evenings. I think the judge said they weren't going to be trying to go at a breakneck pace because they already knew they were going to be going long on this one, and they weren't going to break their neck to try to get things done, but they also were going to try to make sure that they didn't do anything to unduly extend the trial either. So that's where we stand. Let's see here. So chat, tell me, if anybody out there in chat, what are your thoughts on the case so far? Do you think the state, have you heard anything compelling that makes you feel that she's guilty today? Do you think the state's doing a good job laying the foundation, building up to what is going to be their linchpin piece of evidence that we heard about yesterday, which is the conversation she had with her lover and then the jailhouse call with her lover? So, let me know. Let me know. And of course, as always, that's going on. Oh, we're back. We're back, I think. Yep, we are. All right, excellent. So let's jump back into courtroom, guys. And I don't think the sound's back up yet, but let's jump back in and start watching. So, all right.
Most of the stuff with the burn pile. He's going to be a little long, just his alone. We also had about 4 or 5 other marshals. They did a sound test where they went and fired gunshots. We've agreed by stipulation that he can present his videos and then just read the results.
All right, that's fine.
But if we get to close to 5, I'm going to ask that he has to come back and do the marshal part tomorrow, because it can be long, if that's okay with the court.
You think you got him? You got an hour and a half worth of testimony on him before cross?
He's going to be
or do y'all want to do that portion cross and then do that other part in the morning?
We could do that, because he's going to be probably longer, I would think, than
even the videos of that the marshal's office did. I mean, they're kind of long anyway in and of themselves. So,
okay, we'll see how it goes. All right, bring him back in. right, call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please, of course, second call Chris Shaw. Sir, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear affirm the evidence you about to present in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat. Make yourself comfortable.
All right, I've replaced your cursor with a large magenta arrow. You're welcome.
You would state your full name for the record.
My name is Christopher Michael Shaw.
Now, where do you work right in the morning?
I'm currently a police officer with the Cherokee County School District Police Department, assigned to Cherokee High School.
And what do you do at that job?
I am the main campus SRO for Cherokee High School. So I'm charged with safety and security of the main campus and all the surrounding areas of Cherokee High School.
How long have you been doing that?
I'm in my third school year.
And prior to that, did you work for the sheriff's office?
I did. I was employed with the Cherokee Sheriff's Office for 15 years.
When did you go to the academy to become post-certified?
In 2003.
Tell us, if you would, starting with where'd you go to the academy?
I went to North Central Law Enforcement Academy at Treadmill Mall.
And after you graduated from that, where'd you go?
The Holly Springs Police Department, where I completed FTO and was assigned to uniform patrol.
And how long did you do patrol?
I did patrol at Holly Springs for a year. Then I went to the Woodstock Police Department, where I was employed for 4 years. I was a canine officer and a member of the A-10 Traffic Enforcement Network and assigned to uniform patrol. In July of 2007, I went to the Cherokee Sheriff's Office, where I was first assigned to the Waleska Precinct and then to the Bridgemill Precinct. And in 2008, I was selected to become a member of the Violent Crime Unit. At the end of 2008, we combined ourselves with the Criminal Investigations Division, where I remained until 2021.
So did you work in the jail capacity at all, or were you straight to the?
I was one of the agency's first lateral hires at the Sheriff's Office, so I do not have any formal time in the adult detention center.
Okay, so because you have police experience, you were able to come in and just go to patrol?
Yes, sir.
Done patrol, is that right?
Yes.
Done canine?
Yes.
So that's a specialization?
Correct?
Then got into investigations?
Yes.
Was it like a suppression team in the beginning, or just pure investigations?
No, I went straight to the violent crime unit. They were charged with investigating all crimes against persons that did not fall into the domestic violence category as part of the overall criminal investigations.
When you went into the investigations, did you have to take any type of particular training, or do like investigations 1, 2, 3, or what type of training did you have to be an investigator?
So we start our experience trying to figure out your path. I went to the GIPSTIC's first 1 week criminal investigations course. They condensed it from 2 weeks to 1 week and started there. Prior to that, I had taken training in domestic violence and law enforcement officer response. But you get that basic training not only from the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, but then also through your agency and through senior detectives who are teaching you how to work cases with your agency and introducing you into the court systems, learning how your court is going to prosecute and work those cases. And so it's a lot of on-the-job training, and then from there you can go into specializations.
Did you go into type of specialization for the investigations?
I did. I went to crime scene school, and I took crime scene processing down in Warner Robins, and started to really enjoy it. And that's where I started my foray into crime scene processing and becoming a state certified crime scene investigator.
What attracted you to do what I call the CSI crime scene?
I like putting puzzles together, trying to figure out, working with the detectives, helping them answer those questions that needs more time to answer. And I'm afforded that time working that crime scene.
When you first got into crime scene processing or crime scene investigations, you said you went to classes and things like that, and I think you said you were certified or went down, I guess, the professional track. What level of experience at 2018, in July 2018, tell the jury, give us a kind of your resume, what level of experience you have for crime scene investigations at that time?
I was a state certified crime scene investigator. I attained that in 2010.
And let's start with that. What does that mean? What did you have to do to get that?
That means I completed the the state's original prerequisites for becoming a crime scene investigator is a total of 6 classes. You then, once you complete those classes, you have to fill out a post application through the Police Officer Standards and Training Council. It's then submitted along with your post transcript. That's like our school records for all of our training, plus our certificates to show that it is in fact the prerequisite courses. Someone from my agency has to sign off on it and attest that I am actually working crime scenes. So during my training, I'm working crime scenes with another certified crime scene investigator.
Almost like being an apprentice in some ways.
It is, because they require 40 hours as well, which I completed at the Gwinnett County Police Department in their crime scene investigation unit. So once I have all those hours, so right there is close to 300 hours just in basic formal training. That's not counting all the time that I'm working with another crime scene investigator, learning my craft. That's taking pictures, mapping crime scenes, that's looking at lots of latent prints, dusting for latent prints, and all that stuff that comes along with the types of investigations that we do here in Cherokee County. And so you complete that, the state sends you back a certificate saying, congratulations, you're now a state certified crime scene investigator.
Now, when you're certified, is that where everybody gets a trophy, or is it you just show up and get it, or does it actually have standards and difficulties?
No, you have to pass the classes, and they require a practical and a cognitive test during the fingerprinting portions. Photography requires a cognitive and a practical exam to pass the class, and if you don't pass those, you get sent home. You have to wait a year to take them again.
What kind of practicals and tests and things do you do?
During the fingerprinting portion, during classification, you have to classify 10 fingerprint cards, and so when I was going through in 2009, we were still doing the Henry classification. That is a manual classification that was created back in the 1800s by Henry in India to ensure that the workers in the British-controlled Indian continent were getting paid and not having people come and double dip and take money. And so we've taken that classification. We use that worldwide, and we had to do that by hand. And you have to get all 10 right. And if one's wrong, that's it.
Did you have to do like oral presentations, anything like that?
Not during the basic classes. That was in my advanced classes that I go to later.
So after basics, you're qualified as a state at the lowest level, I guess. And I don't mean anything against that, just level 1, I guess. Did you go into a more advanced class?
Well, the state only has one level. What they did was they changed some of their prerequisites for the certification, and I took that additional class. And that additional class was the bloodstain pattern and analysis class, and that's a 40-hour basic class. That's your introduction to bloodstain pattern analysis. I went ahead and took it, even though I was grandfathered in under the old state certification. I took that class.
If you didn't have to do it, why'd you do it?
It's important to my craft. It's crime scene, and what we do is a physical science. It's a forensic science. It's constantly evolving and moving. And so if, as a forensics investigator, I don't stay up to date on current trends, I will fall behind, and I will either not see something that needs to be seen, collected, documented, or worse, just completely mess something up in a scene because I'm looking for one thing instead of knowing that the science has changed and changing my way of processing a scene to fit the current sciences.
Do you challenge yourself in your craft and what you do? Do you always try to get better, always sharpening the sword?
When I was running the unit, I read a lot of white pages because the science was changing so fast that I was constantly on the phone with my fellow colleagues going, hey, I ran into this. This is what I did, and I failed miserably in the lab. What are y'all doing? And so constantly bouncing ideas off my fellow crime scene investigators and being able to call them and going, hey, I'm running into this and I'm having difficulty. What do you think? In collaborating with other crime scene investigators to help collect this forensic evidence.
At the time in 2018, were you teaching or educating other people how to do crime scene investigations?
I was. In 2015, I had the opportunity to attend the National Forensics Academy at the University of Tennessee. I'm a graduate of Session 39. That's another 400 hours of training over 10 weeks from people across the country who are experts in their fields. And this is photography, latent print development, mapping, human remains recovery. Everything that we could possibly do, we got it in 10 weeks, and we got to train with people from all over the country. I did not get to participate in an international session, but we had people from as far away from Anchorage, North Dakota, Army, CID. I got to train and collaborate with all these individuals.
Did you make networks and have, work studies or peers that you, as you talked about, you could learn more from and bounce ideas off of?
Yes, sir.
Did you do any training locally for people, law enforcement, in crime scene?
We would host training at the sheriff's office, especially when we started to get new equipment. Our first one was we got our first Faro 3D scanner. We got that in 2015, the weekend before I reported to the National Forensics Academy. And then again, when we got our infrared cameras that they have at the sheriff's office, we were able to hold training on how to manipulate those new camera systems designed specifically for crime scene investigation.
One turning attention on July 5th of 2018, the date that you got involved in this case. Were you the lead crime scene investigator in this case?
Yes, sir.
Who all else was, first of all, 2511 Purcell Lane, about what time did you get out there?
I believe I got out there about mid-afternoon-ish, sometime between 3 and 4, I believe.
I got about 15:33 here on my notes, so about 3:30, give or
Yes,
take.
sir.
And when you got out there, what do you remember when you first arrived?
So I remember we went down a long driveway. My deputies had parts of the driveway secured off. We had some detectives there, and I was just told, hey, we have a pile here to the left side of the house we need you to go look at. The detectives really didn't have a firm idea of what was going on at that moment, and I said, sure, we'll walk out there and see what we got.
Let me pull up some photographs that have already been admitted into evidence. This is aerial 3. You follow the pointer here. Can you see that pointer?
Yes, you can see the pointer.
When you go up the driveway here, you're talking about you came up, and then right here would be the garage and the house. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then the burn pile was back over here in the woods over here.
Oh, it's not there. Yes.
This is aerial 16. I'm going to fast forward. You come around the left side of the house. And what I can do is I'm going to fast forward just to the so it's aerial 16. Basically where this drone is that kind of how the layout from the burn pile to the house? Is that what it looks like? Now this was a year later, but
Yes, that was, even being a year later, it was still the same distance. Nothing had changed other than we had progressed a year.
if you were to walk from the house to the burn pile, are you going downhill or uphill?
You were going downhill, a slight downhill angle.
Then aerial 17. You got the doors on the left, the ones I'm calling the American doors, to the right, the French doors, and then as this keeps turning to the right, the burn pile would be back down that way. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
did you know you were looking at or what y'all were dealing with when you first arrived? I know it changes at some point, but when you first get there, what's going on?
So when I walk up to what we called the pile, we have this burn pit. I can still feel heat radiating off of it, and I can see what appears to be a set of skeletal remains sitting on top of this pile. There appears to be construction debris and all this other miscellaneous garbage in this pile, but it's very clear to me that I was looking at a set of skeletal remains on the left side. I immediately got everybody to back out, and then started to request additional assets as I'm starting to size up my scene and determine how I'm going to try and recover these remains in a forensic manner.
When you were first called out, were you respond to a person in need of help, or what was the call?
It's a death investigation that they were not sure of what they had.
When you get out there, do you remember the temperature of the taken from the burn pile when you got out there?
I know it was initially warm off me, so one of the things that I did request was have one of the fire investigators someone come out with thermal to give me a temperature. When they were finally able to get out there, it was still over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, with daylight still up at that time.
So still hot.
Still hot.
You back everybody out, then what happens from there?
I requested through my chain of command to contact the GBI and the forensic anthropologist, Dr. Alice Gooding, to get her to come out and assist us with recovering this set of skeletal remains.
And why did you call Dr. Gooding? What was about her that made you call her?
Well, one, she's the state forensic anthropologist. This is definitely well inside her wheelhouse. And two, I'd never done this outside of a training environment. I did not know what I had. I know I had a set of skeletal remains on a pile. It was radiating heat at over 200 degrees. I don't know how this person got there, how they got to the state. And I'm not so far in my ego to go, I can do this on my own without calling experts who I know are going to, one, help teach me how to properly document this, but to ensure that we properly document and collect this entire set of remains. And for me, that's important because that person has a family. I want to make sure we're doing our absolute best to ensure that we do this correct, because we only have one chance to do this. And so if I can call help, and that help is here in our state, I'm going to use it.
Had you ever had a crime scene like this before?
I'd never worked a crime scene like this. I have burned 2 self-immolations in my career, and that is suicide by fire. I have worked those, but never one to this scope where I have both fire and skeletonized remains in an area that I know I need to properly document and recover.
Did you know of Dr. Gooding, a reputation or anything, or what was it about her that made you know that she does this type of stuff?
So through our crime scene community, we knew that Dr. Gooding, one, was in charge of the crime scene work at KSU. She's the lead instructor down there. She has been going in with the Georgia Public Safety Training Center and starting to teach similar classes that students would get at the NFA here at the local level for our local crime scene investigators. And a lot of the classes that she had been teaching and that we had been pushing are scattered recovery remains and what we call buried recovery remains. She was able to teach those classes at the Georgia Public Safety Training Center down in Monroe County. She was coming to a lot of our, I had heard her speak at the Georgia IAI conferences because I'm a member of that. And so that's where I started to learn what her mission, what her outlook was. And she said, anytime you need us, call. We all had her number. She made it known that we could call her for a consult. And if we needed help doing a recovery, because she was the state's forensic anthropologist, we could call her. And I did.
And did she come?
And she did.
What is she like? What's her personality like?
She's an educator, but she's awesome. She did bring one of her master's candidate students, and she was very nice to ask permission before allowing that master's candidate student into the scene. They are all vetted through her program, so that person is documented in my report. But she shows up with all her gear ready to go. And so I actually had to, like, you know, tell her, okay, hold on. I got to lay some groundworks for what we're doing because it's still our case. But I did call her for help. But she is super outgoing. She's very easy to talk to. And she started explaining stuff to myself and my lieutenant again, and it started to come back to us as we're laying certain lines to start setting up our recovery. But ultimately, because she's the state forensic anthropologist, I let her take lead on that. That's her purview, because she's also going to catalog those remains. She's going to make sure we document the complete skeleton, and she's going to make her notes because she's going to produce a report for us too, because this is a police investigation.
Growing up, I like to watch things like Indiana Jones, and when they would go to a site and they would be systematic and have little brushes, little picks, and things like that. How would you describe Dr. Gooding's system as she would get in and start doing stuff? What was that like? Exactly the way I was taught at the National Forensics Academy, because she helped teach up there, and that we do use brushes. What you do see in that is actually real. Had this been a buried, we would have had a 5-gallon bucket, and it would have taken several hours to do this. But we have our lines laid, and everything's broken down into grids, and we don't move from one grid to another until she says it's clear, and she's got her catalog going. And so it's very systematic. It's fast, but it's slow, where we can make sure we're accurately documenting everything. She would take the burn pit, did she divide it into 4 quadrants or 4 sections? Yes. And how would you rope it off, or what were we going to see in the photographs? So what we do is we start to lay what we call a datum line. That's our north-south line. So you're going to see orange string, and you're going to see it broken into quadrants, and you're going to see arrows indicating north. And what we're doing is we're trying to express in 2 dimensions something that is 3-dimensional. So when we attack a scene like this, we're looking at it on 3 axes. We're looking at it from length, from width, but we also want to show height and depth. That way we can explain how far down certain remains are. And it's more defined when we're actually in a vault recovering from the ground. But we still do it on a scattered, because we want to show how far or how close something is in relation to the central mass, if you will. So if we have a large mass in the center, we're going to say that's the center, and then we're going to measure out and say our furthest point is 6 feet down and 8 feet across. And if I can show you that in 3 dimensions on a picture, it makes it easier than just reading off numbers. And so that's why we lay these lines. We also split it into quadrants to make it easier for us to tackle a large scene so that we don't forget anything. What kind of tools or things did you use to do this? Did she bring anything? She brought all her tools, but sifters, buckets, garden trowel, stuff you would find in the gardening center of any Home Depot, Lowe's, or Walmart. That's what we use. Now they're all clean and sterile, and she brings them with her. But it's common tools that you would recognize, except for our sifter. Our sifter is waist level. Each forensics expert builds theirs to meet their needs. Let's look at some of these photographs here. I'm going to tender into evidence. Is Shaw 1 through 281. Investigator, did you have an opportunity to meet with us and go through all these pictures and the videos and everything? Yes, sir. And were they fair and accurate photographs of what was done at the scene and other things in this case? Yes, sir. So, Judge, at this time, I tendered evidence states exhibits, but it's Shaw 1 through Shaw 281.
All right. Objection? No. All right. You admit it?
These just in case you should pop up on the screen. Judge, may we turn down the lights a little bit for these? Would that be okay? we're going to walk through some photographs. I may call them States 1 or Shaw 1 or 1, but all these photographs are going to have your name and a number. So Shaw 1, what do we have here?
So with this first series of photographs, all I'm doing is taking overall photographs outside of the crime scene tape.
As you look at 1, as you look at the photograph, there's a pine tree to the right, then is that the beginning of the burn pile?
So this oak right
that
here, that is
Okay.
is directly in front of the left side of the pile, and then that pile extends from that tree over to the right.
This is 2. We'll be moving to the right. 3, 4. Now this stage, there's no really markings or anything. What is this? How early on is this in the processing the scene?
I'm waiting for Dr. Gooding to arrive, but I'm still taking pictures, trying to do something to be ahead so that when she arrives, we can tackle the next task.
But you didn't dive into the pile and start doing anything until she
No, sir.
arrived on the scene. 5, 6. And was there anything with the pile itself when you first got there that you noticed and thought, here are some things of interest?
Other than the skeletal remains, I, for whatever reason, kept getting the smell of citronella, and I don't know why, and that's not a normal smell for me at a death investigation. I mean, I generally smell other smells related to the artifact of death, but I kept smelling citronella, and I was like, did I spill some when I was filling mine at my house? I don't know, but I just, every now and again as I walked around the pile, I could just smell that.
8, 9, just going back. Now, 13, this is looking from one side of the pile, and you said it was still hot to the touch. Was it on one side or certain parts of it that were that way?
So I didn't walk all the way around. When I got close to it, did what most was just stick my hand. I was like, that's some pretty good heat. And I own firefighter rated boots because I do sometimes have to go into arson scenes. And I wasn't willing to walk close to that in those boots. I was like, let me see what the actual temperature is. 1, I wanted it to be safe, and 2, I needed to document it because it was still radiating quite a bit of heat for this condition.
And how can you compare that? How hot is that if it's over 200 degrees?
Well, we boil water at 212. We can get scalding burns, I believe, between 110 and 160. That's hot enough for me to go, I'm not willing to melt polyester to my skin, and I'm not willing to risk the firefighter rating of these boots. We get an expert out here, see what the temperature is, and see how long we need to wait before we can actually work.
Shaw 14, as I zoom in, what did you notice first when you got to the pile?
So this one, I'm on the left side, and I'm shooting over. I can see what appears to be part of a hand. At the time, what I think is a hand. I see what appears to be part of the rib cage, and I'm starting to orient myself. I see parts of different degrees of what I believe are temperature variations. So when we look at something, we say clothing initially blocks heat, it won't burn evenly. That's what I'm seeing in my head, and I'm trying to figure this out, but I see that it's compact too, and I'm like, okay, is this someone who's fallen over? Because I don't see what we would traditionally think of as a full skeleton of a human being. So did someone fall over? Did someone experience some sort of issue that caused them to fall here? All these are running through my head as I'm taking these pictures, trying to process this and think of next steps to go. How am I going to document this, and what am I going to look for?
And at this time, you didn't know anything about a bullet in the ribs or anything like that?
No, sir.
15, 16, 17. Now we're getting on to 18. And who do we have in this picture and what's going on?
So these are the start of the forensic anthropology examination. So we're marking flags, and you start to see wooden stakes go down for our datum lines. And then we have master's candidates and the deputy coroners in helping to rake and clear while we're taking pictures.
And as you look at the exhibit, Shaw 18, the photograph, I've got the cursor here. It appears that on the right side, there's an angle or it slopes down or goes downhill to the left. Is that right?
Yes.
'20 is kind of showing that angle, that downhill looking up. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, on the outside of the fire pit, there appears to be, is that wood and things that are charred but not burned?
Yes.
Maybe some vegetation?
Correct.
'23, we start to get markers. Now, the A, I know that's going to be renumbered at some point, but what are we doing here in '24? What's this showing?
We are starting to build our quadrants. So we're laying down our north-south line and our east-west. We're also, we have angle indicators on those lines so that if we need to run a tape measure across at one point, we can see what that angle is at that measurement point. So we run the lines and then run the tape. We have our 4 quadrants, but the lines aren't completely square, and we keep it within our boundaries of where we see evidentiary goodies.
And we're going to get into this, but I believe quadrant, it goes top on the right side, A, B, C, D, kind of going in this direction, clockwise.
Yes, I believe we went clockwise that night.
And you see B in Shaw 30 photograph. And then there are some flags that are put down. Are those to indicate things that you just see on the top?
Items of evidence on the top.
Here shows the, Shaw 32 shows the 4 quadrants.
Correct.
So if this is A, B, C, D, and most of the evidence, the remains were found in A and B, is that?
In A and B.
When you were there, did you look for any accelerants?
I did not.
Did you find any, happen to see gasoline cans or gasoline containers, anything like that?
I did not find any in the area of the pile.
Was there various items, different things, wood, fencing, bottles, cans, trash, all kinds of different items in this fire pit?
Oh, there was, yes, sir.
Now we've got to Shaw 49. Given Shaw 51, we're going to go into, tell us again, how would you attack each to remove things and collect things? What would you actually do? If you use a shovel, hands, what did you go down? How did you pick stuff up and how did you sift through it?
So we start with our hands first. It's our most tactile sense. So we're going to start in our quadrant. Someone's writing down. We'll start with the large items that we can see and identify. And then from there, we will start to grab shovels and trowels to pick up areas of ash and debris to go over to the sifter. And those will be transferred from a specific quadrant being documented by the scribe there, and then put in a bucket from there, taken to the sifter. The sifter is placed over the blue tarps, something that will contrast with us, and then it's one bucket at a time. We'll sift it, look through the sifter, empty the tarp back into the bucket, check the sifter, make sure we don't have anything, catalog, document that, and then we just keep rinse and repeating as we go through these buckets. So everything starts to slow down at that point once we've removed the big items that we can readily see and identify.
When you found an item of interest, what would you do with it? Is there,
So
Dr.
it's
Gooding do lay it out, or what would she do?
There's laid out on tarps. However, Dr. Gooding wants to do that. Like I said at the beginning, she's kind of running that. I'm just making sure, one, I'm learning, and two, anything that she needs. But she's running that process. But she's laying stuff out on tarps. She's cataloging the skeletal remains as they're removed, checking on us. I get to do the manual labor. I was sifting some stuff. We're also continuing to rake and make sure that we don't miss anything within that specific quadrant. Once we're done with that quadrant, we move on.
In Shaw 55, we have these, you see the ground has markings like, was that how that was, or is that something y'all did?
That's from us raking.
Did you notice around the burn pile itself, was there any signs of raking or a tractor had been used or something to clear the land?
No, not around that, because the area on the edge of the burn pile was still green with vegetation.
But did you see that there was evidence that a tractor or RTV was in that area?
Not during this point of the investigation.
It says 57, what's going on here? Is this just an example
We're
of what?
examining small bone fragments.
58, what is, just scooping buckets? Is that how that would work?
Yep, we're troweling using a dustpan. We're troweling into the bucket. Once we're satisfied with that, it goes to the sifter. We sift it. Again, we look for small bone fragments, items of evidence, pieces of clothing, and lay those out.
Shaw 62, what is this?
That is a picture of our sifter, one of the buckets that we sifted.
And you would sift, and then the bigger piece would remain on top like this?
Yes, sir. And then we'll go through those with the forensic anthropologist, the master's candidate. We'll pick out the bone fragments. Those will get cataloged. Pieces of construction debris will be examined. If it's not of any evidentiary value, it's returned to another area. Items of evidentiary value are set aside to be cataloged later.
Up to this time in your career, have you been or responded to scenes where a person's body, whether it's alive or dead, a person's body has been greatly demolished, cut up, hurt, broken, otherwise lots of injuries? How many of those have you been to?
I've been to several hundred of those.
And have you seen bones and things like that? Could you recognize certain type of bones, or was the experts able to recognize it much quicker?
They're able to recognize them much quicker, but that's part of my NFA training is a week of anthropology. And I was called many times upon my return by detectives from all over the county. Hey, we found this bone. Fido brought this bone up to the house. Can you look at it? And I had books that I would carry with me to help me identify difference between animal and human.
Have you worked shootings where people have been shot, actually shot?
Yes, sir.
You ever seen anybody get shot and still be able to move or walk a distance?
Oh, yes, sir.
Like what?
One of the last cases I worked, the shooting victim went 125 feet before he collapsed. He was shot inside a home, collapsed on the street after traversing an outer porch, down a set of stairs, across a very large front yard, till he collapsed in the street.
Have you seen people that have been shot, and even after they've been shot, they're able to go a distance or move on their own?
Yes, sir.
How about blood? You see people, different levels of when people are shot and how much blood is there?
That depends on the projectile type, where the person was shot. Did it hit a major artery? Did it hit a bunch of muscle? Did it hit, bone and deflect somewhere? That really depends. And then what were they wearing? Is it winter time? Are they wearing several layers, or are they wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt?
So a different amount of blood, even though people have been shot. You seen that?
Yes, sir.
63, just a sifting again?
Yes, sir.
64,
Still sifting, looking for small.
65.
Same.
And then 66, what are we doing here?
We are at what we call the bottom. We have now hit Earth. So we have recovered all of the burned material, whatever that may be. And so we will scrape another layer just to ensure that we've not missed anything. So we try to go to Earth and then scrape a layer.
You see in the photographs that it's daylight and then it's nighttime. How long were y'all out there?
I believe I watched the sun go down and come back up that particular day. 4 or 5 a.m. is when I finally left the first full cycle of work.
Painstaking process, slow and tedious.
Yes, sir.
67, what are we doing here?
We are running our metal detector. We want to make sure we don't leave anything.
Did you find any blood at the scene out on the burn pile?
No, sir.
As I go through these, this is the blue tarp photographs. What are we doing here?
So we're just documenting stuff that we found within those quadrants.
Now we'll get into these. What are this Shaw 83? What are these photographs of?
These are photographs of the skeletal remains that were recovered.
At some point during the investigation, there was something found in a rib. Do you remember when that happened?
Yes, sir. I believe it was well after midnight when I was made aware that something had been discovered lodged in the rib cage.
One 138. Did you remember how it was described by people at the scene? What was found? How they refer to it as?
I don't remember how they. I don't remember if they said it looked like an eraser or. I don't remember what exactly they came and told me. I do remember they said, "Hey, we found something. You have to come look at this now." I said, "Okay."
What happened from there when that was found?
So I walked back down to the pile where they're working. Dr. Gooding and her team are still working. Investigator Olenek, who was taking my picture, says, "Sarge, here you go." And I went, that looks like a projectile. Everybody stop what you're doing right now. I had to explain to Dr. Gooding, "Ma'am, I need you to stop for a moment." Everybody stopped. Went and got one of the detectives. I believe I went and got Lieutenant Clark, but I know I let Lieutenant Ballard and them know. Say, "Hey, we've got a projectile." we also had to stop and let the coroner know at this point, because now we've just changed our dynamics of our investigation. And so we had to take a hard pause while the detectives figured out their next steps. And so I had to wait for them until we could get back to work on what we were doing.
You were investigating a death,
Correct.
but now you're investigating possibly a murder. Is that shifted?
Yes.
Didn't find any gun. So if it's a suicide, you respond to a suicide. What do you look for?
The same things I look for in a homicide. We'll try to look for defect. I'm looking for angle of entry, back spatter. A gun location doesn't necessarily mean anything to me because I've had suicide victims do weird things with guns. A note, sometimes I find them, sometimes I don't. But I know in a relatively short amount of time if I'm working with a suicide or if I'm working with something else. This case was unique because, yes, we had a projectile, but it was still in a set of burned remains. So the best thing to do was to stop and get everybody on the same sheet of music at this point.
Shaw 166. What do you remember finding this?
Yes,
Seeing this?
I remember seeing that.
Now, came back out at some point and we're working this scene, but there's a photograph taken of a tire mark in Shaw 174, and in relation to where everything is at, in Shaw 174, when you look at these tire marks, what is at the top of the picture?
That's the pond they have on their property in between the main house and their pastures and their barn out to the far right.
This is 177, and the pattern there has a unique pattern. We're going to look at this pattern on the tires in RTV later on. And then I believe there was a dive done to look for the gun in the pond.
Yes, sir.
Were you there for that?
Yes, sir, I was.
After you were worked the burn pile, you actually did some other things while you were at the scene. So, were you able to go home on, July 5th, Thursday, you probably worked into Friday morning, July 6th. Did you able to go get some sleep, or did you come back, or what'd you do?
I think there was 2 or 3 hours where I was released and then came back
When you came
Friday, finished the pile. Cherokee Fire Search and Rescue was in the pond. We completely sifted the pile. We also did line searches of the area behind the pile while the detectives were inside the house doing their searches.
Let's see, 170, let me look at someone. Let me jump. I'm going to come back to it. It looks like you came also back on July 11th, and you were working with Ballard to process some of the scene, I believe, or was,
Yes, sir. Those days started to run together.
Okay.
But I was out there for everything that I have.
and we're going to get to the photographs here, but to July 6th looked like you came out and there was a blood stain that you thought, some interest on the front door on the floor?
Yes, while we were still working in the pile and I had the fire investigator was collecting some items, I was asked to go in and assist CSI Thrasher and CSI Eckerd with some stains that they had located. My command asked me to give it a second look and do some documentation and some field testing.
And then you, there was one stain, there was actually a window, and there's 4 things that you looked at, but looks like you field tested the stain positions number 1 and 3. Do you remember doing that?
Yes.
And then I guess they were tested for mammalian blood using a OBITS test?
Hexagon OBTIS test.
OBTIS,
yes,
okay. And did stain number 1, was that positive for blood, mammalian blood?
I believe that one was, yes.
And this test that you used, what is it, and what is the OBTIS test?
And so it's what we call a field presumptive test that we can do at a scene to see if a stain that we're looking at, 1, is blood, and if it is blood, if it's mammalian blood. So we'll use these at a scene to eliminate certain stains and then prioritize collection of other stains.
And then you also, on the 6th, I believe, found a deer camera near the burn pile?
Yes, while we were doing our walks, I saw a trail cam sitting on a trail leading behind the pile to the left down a well-worn path, and it was walking a ranch fence.
What do you mean by that?
You know, the post fence with the wire to keep cattle or horses separate. I call it a ranch fence.
And did you collect that and SIM card and things like that from the camera?
Yes, I did.
I believe on July 11th of 2018, you came back again, and this is when you were helping, well, I guess this was at the sheriff's office. Y'all took some items back, and you helped Lieutenant Ballard process the shirt that we're looking at.
Yes.
I think the shirt was originally found in the house as we're looking at Shaw 178. Is this that maroon shirt that we're talking about?
It is.
And then I believe for the sleeve, at some point y'all took that and had it sent off to the GBI. Is that right?
I did not do any further processing after what I did in the lab. I know we did note some stains and let the detective know there was some stuff there that could be sent off.
Right.
I don't recall if it was ever sent
We've
off.
stipulated to the reports that items were sent to the GBI and tested.
Oh, yes, sir.
188. This is a picture on the thing on the front of the shirt. What did that look like to you?
To me, at first breath, it looked like a scorch mark.
Consistent with soot or something from fire?
To me, it just looked like a scorch mark. It was something that was important enough for me to document. So I wanted to make sure that my case detective knew, hey, this is here.
All right. And then there was a OBTI test done on the shirt for blood. And what is this? It looks like a pregnancy test, but tell us what this is.
This is and this was done at the house. This is in our lab. So what you see is the testing vessel of the hexagon test. It uses a cotton swab and a liquid in the test kit. You will swab the suspected blood stain, collect that on that swab, and then you'll clip it off into the fluid. It's a phenolphthalein style solution. Give it a good shake, count, and then you'll break off an end. You'll pour it into the area marked S, it's that trough, and then you wait. And so the first line you'll see is the control. That tells you, hey, the test is working correctly. The second line, the T, that's your positive for mammalian blood.
So the control C and then T here. And then some shoes were taken from the house, 2 pair of Nike shoes. Is that right? And that's what we have
That's
here.
correct.
And then the ones here these blue Nike. And did y'all notice things on these?
I saw what appeared to be some suspected blood stains on the shoes that I wanted to test.
And is that what this OBTI test is here?
Yes, we did one at the scene, and then we did some more follow-up in the lab.
Now, the Shaw 211, when you came back, I believe the 7th, check my notes, the 6th, the next day, so July 6th. This is the front door here, so as we're standing here looking towards the kitchen table area, we're talking about this area on the floor here, is that right?
Yes.
Shaw 215, is this the spot we're talking about?
Yes.
That was 1, and that was tested positive for blood?
Yes.
Again, going back, I believe the 11th, y'all bring evidence back to the sheriff's office, and we're going to be processing some evidence here. Where is this actually at the sheriff's office?
So this is at our headquarters building in the old section of our jail at 498 Chatton Drive. We have the bottom section, which was our old staff dining, that we converted into our lab.
Again, the shirt. What do we have here?
And so I've put this shirt under an alternate light source. I'm just looking at it.
And this is 232 for the record, sorry.
I'm looking at it under UV light. UV blood is the only liquid in the body that doesn't fluoresce under UV light. It's going to turn brown. All I'm using this for is to help locate and verify what I'm seeing in the natural light is a location that I need to pay attention with when I take pictures or do any field presumptive testing.
And brought the shoes back too?
Yes.
And then you and Lieutenant Ballard processed the, I believe, the RTV, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And swabs were taken from, looks like the RTV, the L2 shifter, the shifter up here on the steering wheel, I believe. The swab was taken from there, GBI item 25B, and that was taken and sent off to the GBI. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then also y'all tried to look at and process the Kubota, is that right?
Yes.
Now notice the tire marks on the Kubota tractor. Now this type of tractor, is it one of those kind of easy to drive? You press forward, it goes forward, press back, it goes backwards?
I don't know anything about the operation of the tractor, but I know this one is not one of the models I'm used to where you have to run the handle up on the top side and engage the brake. But as far as the movement, I'm not familiar with it.
But you see the pedals here on the right.
Yes, sir.
This says Shaw 264. What do we see here?
So we're looking at a chemoluminescence reaction with the application of Blue Star onto the hood of the tractor closest to the fuel filling station.
Looks like something in 264 is blue here as I point to it, and blue below it here. What is that? And there's some blue over here.
And that's an indication of blood.
Could it be something else?
There are instances of false positives with Blue Star. However, when we see those, we'll see those pop like fireworks and then fade away very quickly. Blue Star lasts longer in its chemoluminescence than the other chemoluminescence that we would use. And so not only is it glowing, but you can see where it's attached itself to any trails of blood as it runs. So we know this to not be a false positive. It's an indicator that there could potentially be blood there.
Is your reputation as a crime scene investigator is it important to you?
It's very important to me.
If somebody, not that they would do this, but if someone is there and just says, take a fast picture of this or something like that, are you going to let anybody tell you how to process evidence?
Not on my case, no, sir.
No, you're not going to just, if it pops real fast, get a real quick picture, are you?
No, sir.
And we've got some photographs here. We're going through the RTV. Now, as we get into, this is 268, we get into things here. We're going to try to do something. All right, if you would, Judge, with your permission, I'd like him to step down and actually show how we do these. But this is 268-1. This is 268. Is it? Can you see it very clearly? Looks like just darkness, doesn't it?
Yes, but I can see it because I'm attuned to it. But yes, it is a dark picture. When we shoot Blue Star, it has to be dark.
Now, this is 268.1, which is the same thing. If you don't mind, come down here and show the jury how you can use the shading to make it pop.
You want to drive the mouse?
Yeah, I'm going to let him drive,
That'd
Judge.
be fine.
So this is 268.
So inside Windows 11, they basically have a free version of Lightroom, which is what I used at the sheriff's office. And so for pictures where we want to do some basic lighting adjustment, if we're shooting in an altered light, we can come over here to the adjustment side. In here we look at brightness, exposure, contrast, our highlights, our shadows, and we can move these slides all the way to the left, all the way to the right until we get whatever we want to be exposed. And so oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the soft voice. Go ahead and speak about it.
Apologize. What we'll do is we'll move these sliders left and right until we get the desired exposure that we want. So helping to kind of clean up, if you will. We're not actually changing the photograph because we don't save it to the original image. It will always be a copied image. And so for these, when we started to, we were pulling out the brightness and our exposure, and then we'll take our contrast and we want to see how it goes. So we're going to run it all the way to the negative to get it to come up. Our highlights wasn't really doing anything, but our shadows. And so we would run that for those photographs to bring it up. And I know your screen, you can't really see it, but there is
Want to try to do something remote? My screen looks completely different.
yes, sir. It has to. It probably has to deal with the tie-in, but I assure you that there is a change on a computer screen where we can then save it as a copy. And so in this instance where you see parentheses and a number, that is a saved copy. And then we can further explore that inside our metadata and make sure that we haven't altered an image. But that's how we do that in the Windows program.
I think if you have a seat, I'll go through that, and I'm going to cancel it because I'm not going to save this one.
He's going to be coming back in the morning. If y'all want to test the settings on the monitor and see if y'all can adjust it and show that in the morning, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
So 268, and then before trial, you were able to get with one of our investigators and adjust it. Is that right?
That is correct.
So this is 268.1, which is the adjusted, and what do we see here?
The chemoluminescent reaction, the blue star on the towel that we located in the back of the RTV.
And what is that indication of what it could be, possibly be?
An indicator of possibility of blood.
269, what do we see here at the bottom?
Chemoluminescence reaction.
And 269.1 with the adjustment, same thing?
Same thing.
270, kind of right here. 270.1, is that adjusted?
Yes, sir.
So let's see if the so this is 270, and you just adjust the light. Is that what you would do?
Yes.
So as I go with brightness to the left, it gets dark. But if I zoom over, you actually can see it.
Yes, sir.
And then, so it takes a dark picture with blue star on you. You're better able to actually see it pop. Is that right?
We're able to see the chemoluminescence reaction.
And basically what I just did there is what you do with these photographs.
Yes, sir.
270, 270.1, same thing, adjusted, unadjusted, adjusted.
Correct.
271, 271.1, 272, 272.1, 73, so off that towel, he has some illumination from Blue Star. Did you process the RTV, the tractor, the shoes, the shirt, the floor in the house, and we're going to probably talk about probably tomorrow, and we'll get in, but you also assisted with some other things in the case. Did you go back out when they were, went back out, and I think about a year later, looked for some casings on the property or some, there was a shooting range or something like that on the property. Did you go back out and help with that?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what y'all were doing there. What were you trying to do?
We went back out a year later. We flew the drone footage. We did some decibel meter testing, and there was an area on the lower, I believe it was the right side. It was down a pretty steep embankment where they had an old tree that they were using for target practice, as folks do out in that part of the county. So I went out there looking for projectiles to see if I could locate a projectile that I could send to the crime lab to possibly match to the two projectiles that were located that night at the scene.
And did y'all collect casings, bullets, things like that, and bring it back, and some of that was sent to the GBI?
Yes, sir.
I think we're going to get into it tomorrow, but did you also come back out on July 18th, I believe was it that year or the next year? I think it was the same year. And with the marshal's office, actually do some sound testing.
That was July 18th of 2019.
2019. About a year later, I believe, and then y'all came back out and had some equipment to actually do a test fire and then measure the loudness of those gunshots. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to stop here, Judge. I'm not going to go into the test fire until tomorrow probably. I'm just going to, can I tender it to them for their cross?
Cross on this portion.
I think it would be easier for me to do it all at once, if that's okay with the court.
Let's do something for.
I do if you want.
Yeah, try to split it up into what he's testified about now, and then we can cover this stuff tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, turn the lights. You need the photographs, or turn the lights back up.
Oh, please turn back up.
You don't need to stretch long for. Do a 24/7 anytime workout.
Good afternoon. Is it, because I know you're with the campus police now, right?
Yes, sir.
Is it Sergeant still or
Officer.
just Officer Shaw?
Yes, sir.
Officer Shaw, my name is Michael Ray. I'm representing Ms. Farris. Let's find it logical. Okay, let's start here. So from what I gathered from Mr. Bogus, going over all of your experience, was you're state certified in crime scene investigation, right?
Yes, sir.
You also attended the National Forensic Academy.
Yes, sir.
And at this point, on July the 5th, 2018, you were the lead crime scene investigator at the Purcell Lane house.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, in terms of crime scene investigation, the buck stops with you. Right?
Yes, sir.
So, and then the person above you would have been Lieutenant Ballard.
Correct.
Right. So the witnesses before you, if I've been yelling at them about things not being done, that's your fault. Fair to say?
Fair to say, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, so let's get into kind of what you did. With the house, because I know you had told me that you were still out at the burn pile around midnight and you found the bullet in the rib around that time, after midnight.
I believe it was after midnight, yes, sir.
All right. Now, we heard from was it Sergeant Westbrook? He's the one that actually noticed the bullet first?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, not okay. Is that correct or not correct?
Well, if he noticed it first, then that's correct.
Okay, well, wouldn't he have notified you if he found it first? I guess here's my question. Who found the bullet in the rib?
I was notified by Investigator Olenek.
Investigator who?
Olenek, who was
Olenek.
taking pictures. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so he told you, and then that's when you would have called Lieutenant Ballard, I'm assuming, or somebody.
Yes, sir.
All right. And that would have been presumably into July the 5th.
Into the 6th, I believe. We were out there on the 5th.
Oh, yeah, you came on the 5th, so it would have went to the 6th, yes. All right. Okay. And you left at some point because you came back on the 6th.
Yes.
How did, because this is your crime scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
How was the crime scene secured overnight? Because I'm assuming not everybody stayed out there all night long.
That is correct. So my crime scene vehicle stayed out there. The sheriff's office, we stationed deputies at the entry point onto the property with the crime scene log.
Okay, with the crime scene log on 24 hours a day.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, and that would have been done until y'all were done with the house. Now, granted, I know y'all have been out there several other times, including over a year later, right?
Correct.
So, but during that relevant portion of time, law enforcement was there the entire time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, setting up the grid, and I'm sorry, because of the way your direct was, so just going to kind of jump around, okay? So if you don't understand what I'm asking, just let me know. So you called Gooding to come out just because that's what she does, right? She's an anthropologist.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So she comes out and she's the one that sets up that grid, along with, you and whoever else.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So she would have done that. How long was it from the time you saw the body, made the determination, got the approval, that Dr. Gooding showed up?
Probably about 2.5 hours.
Okay. Is it during that period of time, because you testified earlier that the fire was so hot when you got there that you didn't feel comfortable working in it, right?
Correct.
All right. So did it cool off in that 2.5 hours to be a comfortable temperature for you to work in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What temperature did you let the fire get down to before you started working?
I don't recall if we measured it when I went into it. I know it was comfortable enough that we all made a determination we were going to start working.
Okay. Oh, it was measured by Shane Daniels, right?
Yes, sir.
With Cherokee Fire Investigator?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you were out at the scene or at the burn pile, you're looking at the remains. At any point, did you touch any of the remains? Did you disturb any of the remains?
I did not.
Did any of the other investigators, as far as you know, touch or disturb any of the remains?
From the time I arrived on the scene, no one touched the remains until Dr. Gooding arrived.
Okay. So if Dr. Gooding comes and testifies, and she was like, this is where we found this, this is where we found this, this is where we found this, then that is where it was, at least when you got there.
That is correct.
Okay. Have you heard anything about anybody moving anything around prior to you getting there?
I was not made aware of anything.
Okay. I'm just pulling that up for when I need it. You had talked about this citronella smell and that you kept smelling around the burn pile, right?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody else, to your knowledge, ever say that?
I didn't hear anybody say it, no, sir. It
Okay.
was my observation.
Did you put it in your report?
I believe it was in my report.
Okay. You also you did note in your report that Shane Daniels had taken samples from the burn pile.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know whether or not those were ever tested for any type of accelerant or anything?
I believe they were sent off. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did that come back that you're aware of? The results of that?
I believe no accelerants came back.
Okay. You also, or do you know that Ms. Farris, they tested her hands for accelerants and that she was negative for accelerants? Did you know that?
If it was mentioned to me, then yes, but I know he did his fire investigator duties while at the scene.
Okay. So, best you know, there's no accelerants, right?
Correct.
Correct. All right. Now, well, I'll come back to that. You stated that there was, you observed no blood at the burn pile, correct?
Correct.
And that would be, let me pull this because this is a kind of a tricky picture. So this is actually a photograph. The house is to your back, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. And so going from the house down to the burn pile, it's somewhat sloped, right?
Correct.
So you didn't observe any blood going from the house down to the burn pile, right?
I did not know, sir.
Okay. And you didn't observe any blood anywhere around the burn pile, right?
Correct.
Okay. Number 150. Okay. So that is what you had originally referred to, or some of the investigators referred to as the eraser.
Yes, sir.
That looked like an eraser. All right. When that was taken, did Dr. Gooding or the coroner take that into evidence?
The coroner took the remains into evidence.
Okay, so Dr. Gooding got them from the pit, contained them somehow, and the coroner then took custody of it?
The remains were cataloged in white disaster bags so that the coroner could seal those and take those with her.
Okay. And as far as you know, this projectile was sent off to the crime lab as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bear with me, this thing scrolls kind of fast. So going back to 174, Mr. Fogus had asked you about the tire pattern here in 174, 175, 176, 177. Any imprints or anything done on that? Or did you take any imprints of that, or did you just take photographs of it?
What do you mean by imprints, sir?
I don't know, like if you see Bigfoot walking around, you know, like make a cast of it, so you can compare it to other things later.
No, I did not cast that at the scene.
Okay. Did you do anything else with it other than just take the photographs?
No, sir, because I've got a top-down 1-to-1 90-degree photograph of it.
Okay, so you didn't need to do anything else with it?
I did not feel at the time I needed to do anything else with it. Yes,
Okay. Just since it's the order of the photograph, so that'll just make it the least confusing. So this red shirt, I understand you did not find the red shirt, right?
Correct.
All right. Do you know where the red shirt was found?
I know it was in the house, sir.
Okay. You don't know where in the house?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know where the blood, because this was 190, was your test of the blood? What location on the shirt did you use your test?
You'll go back to the picture with the OB ABFO square. That's where we tested.
Well, this one?
No, sir. Go back one. There. The big stain.
Okay. This stain?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm asking you because I don't know. Is that this stain? I'll flip between 186 and 187, okay? Is that the same stain? In the middle of the shirt?
I believe it would be the same stain. Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we go back to the whole shirt, we can get to it. So it's kind of right here, the right hand side, almost directly below the logo. Fair enough?
On the left-hand side, yes, sir.
Okay. And that's what your testimony to this jury is, that tested positive as being blood.
They feel presumptive, yes.
Okay. Field presumptive for
Yes,
blood.
sir.
Okay.
For mammalian blood.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And are you aware that this shirt was sent to the crime lab?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware that the test came back for this shirt?
I know they did get test results back.
Okay. Do you have any indication of what those test results were?
I've been through several of them, so I don't recall right off the top of my head. No,
Okay,
sir.
that's fine. We've got those people will come in later. So the next thing with these shoes, I believe didn't you try to do a test on these shoes and it was negative?
One shoe did test. One shoe did show negative, and one did show positive.
Okay. And one of them was also sent to the crime lab as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. And on stage 209, at the top on the right-hand side of the shoe, that's the spot where you tested?
Yes, the biggest stain. Yes, sir.
Okay. And not putting words in your mouth, but that was sent to the crime lab, right?
The shoes were, yes.
Yeah. But you're probably not been enlightened as to what the results were on that inquiry.
I do know the ones that we tested in the lab did not come back. They came back positive for blood, but not for Mr. Farris. Came back with Mrs. Farris's blood.
Okay. But you don't know which shoe that refers to, right?
The ones in 209.
Right here? This one?
Yes, sir, those are
Okay.
the ones that we tested in the lab.
Okay, so you tested that, the 209, we'll just call those the blue Nikes. So that had Ms. Ferris's blood on it.
I believe that's what the report said. I was made aware of that.
Okay, you didn't do the testing.
I did the field presumptive testing in our lab, but we sent it down to the crime lab.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Did anybody tell you what the crime lab said about it?
That I believe it came back, it was not Mr. Ferris's blood.
Okay, exactly. Thank you. All right, now this little spot. So I'm going to show you 213. So this little entryway between the front door and going into the dining room, there is that little spot right there. Did you field test that spot specifically?
Yes, because it was a large volume.
Okay, so that is what you wrote in your report. That is stain 1.
Yes,
Okay, so that tested positive for blood.
yes.
Okay. Did you then swab that and send it to the crime lab?
I don't recall if I swabbed it or not. I'm pretty sure I did. Now, whether it went to the crime lab, again, I don't know. I was never asked to complete that process and send it down.
We already established that this is your investigation, right? So who do you got to ask to send evidence to the crime lab?
So I conversate with the case detective.
So it'd be Detective Hayes.
Yes. I
Okay.
would not make assumptions on the directions of his case.
So you would leave it up to him to decide what evidence you test and don't test? While you're actually investigating the crime scene?
The crime scene itself was already investigated. This is follow-up forensics investigation. And so
No, this
we would
is
never-
this testing that you did right here, this spot, states 217. That's on July 5th or 6th.
that was tested at the scene and it field presumptive tested positive for blood.
And then what my question is, because your report says nothing about it, did you swab it, bag it, tag it, and send it off to the crime lab?
If it is not in my report, then I did not swap it, nor did I collect it.
Okay. So if it wasn't swabbed and sent to the crime lab, we have no idea whose blood that supposedly is, or even if it is actual human blood.
Correct.
Now, you also had talked about with Mr. Fogus, there was another stain. You called that stain 3, and it was negative, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then there was also what you had reported being stains 2 and 4, but they were too small for testing.
Correct.
Okay. All right. 232. Because I was just confused about this. So, states 232, the ultraviolet shirt. This is still the red shirt, just under ultraviolet light.
Yes, sir.
Let me see if there's that a better explanation. So 131 shows the shirt, the red shirt, and then that's it under ultraviolet light, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you were talking with Mr. Fogus that blood is the only thing, and I'm maybe paraphrasing. Blood is the only thing that will glow brown under ultraviolet light. Is that what you meant?
No, it doesn't fluoresce. I'm not found where blood fluoresces under ultraviolet light.
So blood doesn't fluoresce under ultraviolet light.
Correct.
Okay. So presumably, what I'm assuming what you're implying is that it's your belief that some of these other spots were potentially blood.
They could potentially be, yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming when you put this light on this shirt, you would then pull out those handy little, what do you call them? OB TIS kits? The OB TIS?
The hexagon OBTIS kits.
Yeah, okay. So you'd have pulled out one of those and tested those spots, right?
No, sir.
Okay. You just did it on that one little spot where we had previously identified kind of in the middle of the shirt.
Correct.
Okay. So any of these other spots you didn't test, and you're not familiar with what, if anything, came back from the crime lab.
We did not test those for field presumptive positive or negative testing in our lab. It's a documentation, and then if it's sent off to the lab, we let the crime lab do their testing on it.
Okay. And but you don't know what the crime lab testing was?
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's go to the RTV. Now, a lot of the RTV stuff, this photograph, this is when you brought it over to the jail, right? Which you call it your lab, but your lab's at the jail?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is brought over to the lab. You actually did a lot of the Blue Star testing actually at the residence, right?
Lieutenant Stewart did get samples out there for us.
Okay. Well, I just thought Lieutenant Stewart just took the photographs that you were doing the actual Blue Star.
Not at the house. All my Blue Star was done here at the lab.
Okay. Do you know who did any Blue Star at the house? If anybody.
If anybody, it was the GBI.
Okay. Let me ask you this, just while, because I know you had to go up the chain of command to, I'm assuming, hire Dr. Gooding to come out here to remove the remains, right? Like you had to call Ballard, Ballard had to call Captain Pinion, and Captain Pinion had to give the okay, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And somebody, I'm not 100% sure, I don't know if it was you or was it Lieutenant Ballard, made the decision to call out the GBI, Lana Coffee. Who made that call?
Lieutenant Clark.
Lieutenant Clark. All right. What was Lieutenant Clark's role in this?
He was the persons unit lieutenant. So he would have been over.
You kind of got a deep voice, so a little louder.
I'm sorry, he was the persons unit commander.
The persons unit?
Crimes against person.
Oh, crimes. Okay, crimes against person. So he was that commander. So he made the call to call out Atlanta Coffee.
Well, but I had to start with him because it was done outside of my purview.
Okay, so he's over here, and him or somebody made that decision.
Yes, sir.
They didn't ask you.
Correct.
All right. Even though you're the lead crime scene guy.
Correct.
Correct. All right. How many crime scenes? I know you had said you'd worked in Gwinnett and stuff like that. How many of these investigations, larger investigations, had you done being at Cherokee?
Probably a dozen or so large-scale investigations to this magnitude.
Yeah, that's what I'm not talking about the little things. Have you seen the sheriff's office call out the GBI before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you seen the sheriff's office call out the GBI to essentially conduct the investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know why the GBI was not called in to conduct this investigation?
Because we could do our own.
Okay. Who makes that decision? And if you don't know, you don't know. I understand if that's above your pay grade, but to the best of your knowledge, who makes that decision?
To call the GBI?
Yeah.
Well, that would come from the command staff.
The command staff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So, jumping into the RTV. With that, I lost my spot. You had done some swabs on the RTV, right? Especially the L2 shifter. That was at least one swab that you had done. We actually don't have. There's no photographs of the R2 shifter, at least that are in evidence. So, Mr. Fogus had put up what is 266. All right, and I'm assuming here in the top left-hand corner on the gate of the Kubota, that's where you're saying is maybe blood.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's what Blue Star is telling you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm assuming, yet again, immediately you see that, you got to swab it to send it off to the crime line, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Why?
Because those two particular little marks were not large enough stains to collect a sample. We saw the chemoluminescence over the entire we sprayed the entire tailgate area.
Yeah.
Those were the only, actually there's a little third little dot right there.
Yeah, right here. Well, why not take you Q-tip, long Q-tip, rub it on there, and see if you can get a DNA and send it off.
Because we did not at that time.
Okay, so essentially we may have blood, but we don't know. Right?
Correct.
Now that would be the same, Mr. Fogus has shown you right here. A little bit of this. You didn't swab this, you didn't try to collect it to send it off to see about that, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now what about, because there's no photographs and there's nothing in your report, what about the actual bed of the RTV? There's no indication there was any testing done in that, right? You didn't do any testing in that.
We did not.
Okay. You essentially just sprayed the Blue Star around the bed, correct?
Well, we have it. It goes into the bed as well.
Okay. You didn't see any blood in there.
We did not get any chemiluminescence reaction.
Okay. From the bed of the RTV, just so the record's clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, this tractor. Now, when you were doing this, because your report doesn't, at least your initial report that I have doesn't talk about getting super detailed. It's not a bad. I'm not saying you wrote a bad report. It's not a bad report. It's just not as detailed. So, like with this tractor, and so I mean, you're saying that this is a little bit of blood, or could be blood on the top of the tractor. When did y'all do this testing at the jail?
I believe this was done several days after we finished our work at the actual house.
Okay. So this is, y'all had to load up the tractor and the RTV, haul it over to the jail, and keep it there before, and then if you just tested it a couple days later.
Well, I think we also had to get search warrants to do our processing, I believe.
Okay. And yet again with this wasn't swabbed and collected and sent to the crime lab for identification, correct?
Correct.
Judge, I've got probably about another maybe another 10 minutes or so. That's whatever you want to do. The towel that was collected. You just did the testing on this towel. You didn't locate the towel, correct?
Well, I mean, it was in the back of the RTV, but yes, we tested it.
Okay. And it's what your statement is that this is blood.
It's
Or is that it's presumptive for blood because of Blue Star? Okay. Now, did this go to the crime lab? This towel?
I don't know if it did or not.
Okay. Are you aware of any towels and hand or washcloths? I guess they actually are towels and washcloths that did make it to the crime lab?
No, sir.
Okay. If the crime lab tested a towel that the state believed had blood on it, it's a fairly good assumption that's the towel, isn't it?
We'll go with fairly good assumption. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now this changing things. So how come, like you got the states 268s just on the you can't see it on the TV screen, but I can on a computer monitor. I can see that it's the towel. Okay, so and then you change the settings and stuff so that you can actually see the Blue Star, right?
Yes, sir.
So all right. Now why do you have to do that on this, but you didn't have to do that on the tractor?
We had enough ambient light in the evidence bay. There's a single emergency light that must remain illuminated in our evidence bay.
Mm-hmm.
That provided enough light for the camera to capture the chemiluminescence. When we did the towels in the lab, we can turn off all our lights. And so we were trying to adjust our cameras out to pick up the reaction and see the outline of the towel.
I'm confused. I thought you needed total darkness to be able to see Blue Star. Okay. If I sprayed it right here on the table, and let's just, there's blood there, would I see it light up?
Well, if there's blood on the table, we wouldn't need to use the Blue Star.
Okay, fine. There's blood on the table. I wiped it off. Now I spray the Blue Star on there.
It would need to be dark in here to see the chemoluminescence, and we would use the ambient light in order to adjust the camera out to take the picture. You have
Okay,
to
so
kinda use it
basically
two and two.
you have to get the light setting to a certain point to allow you to be able to see it. But it's not total darkness.
Correct.
Okay.
We're shooting on full manual functions on our camera.
Okay, so why don't you, for some of those towel photographs, instead of manipulating the contrast and the brightness of the photograph, just take it somewhere so you can actually take a proper photograph?
Because if you keep reapplying Blue Star, you'll lose the reaction. And so we have to try our best in our reaction time, because if you keep saturating the towel, you're not going to get a reaction at that point.
Well, wouldn't it be a smart idea to do the testing the first time in a place where you know you have the proper light?
We did in our lab.
I mean, obviously not if you got to sit there and change the settings on the photograph to be able to see it. And you don't need to do it on all of them.
Yeah, and what we did is acceptable.
Well, I didn't ask you if it was acceptable. I
Moving
mean,
and
let's
changing
make it
up.
easy.
It did.
Well, no, because it's not in a written. You have manipulated the photograph by taking out what it actually is so you can see something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. You didn't have to do that with the tractor because the tractor is in a proper spot to be able to see what you're trying to see, right? It has enough light to be able to see it.
Yes.
Okay, but you're testing the towel in a place that you're intentionally testing it there, and you can move it. I mean, it's a towel. You can pick it up, move it wherever you want to, and you can move it somewhere else so you would not have to manipulate the photograph. Correct.
No, I could see the reaction in my camera, and I could see it in my lab.
But we just can't see it in any of your non-manipulated photographs. Right? Like 268. You see any luminescence?
I do.
Okay. Judge, if we can, I'd like to stop there. I don't want to let him go just yet, so I may come back tomorrow on cross, if that's all right.
All right. All right, anything else?
That's just tomorrow.
All right, we'll break for now. Same instructions I gave you yesterday. Let's get here at there. I've been informed by the folks that are going to be monitoring your parking spaces wherever they were. I think I was wrong. They were outside, right? But anyway, or out, not underneath the parking deck. But wherever they were, apparently y'all found them. They're not going to be there before 8:30 to man it. So y'all get here between 8:30 and 8:45. There'll be a parking space for you, so you don't have to get here earlier. And we'll be up and running at 9 o'clock. Remember, don't look up anything about the case, anyone about the case, any people, witnesses. Don't Google any terms that you have heard in the case so far. Don't Google anything, because you're going to find stuff about this case if you do, because it's gaining traction and you don't really want to know anything about it, or you can't know anything about it. Y'all can look all that up when we're done, and there'll be a million hits on it by then. All right, with that, anything else? All right, y'all can be excused. I'll talk to the juror who sent me the note about I'll talk to the lawyers about it, but I have an appointment, and I need to make an appointment too, because I missed mine from last week, so I'm going to do the same day. So we may tell everybody to schedule all their things and we may take an extended lunch break that day. Right now we're looking for October 17th. If someone has an appointment that they can't change, so I'm going to schedule something that same day. We'll see what we need to do.
You can talk to the parties, you just can't talk to other people.
All right, so as I just said, you can sit down. Juror has an appointment. They need to go get medications on the 17th, at noon. Like I said, I had to cancel an appointment to do the same thing, so we may take an extended lunch break that day. And everyone else can schedule their appointments. All right, anything else we need to take up before we break?
That's not gonna.
All right, I'll see y'all in the morning.
All right, guys. So that concludes day 2 of the Melody Farris trial. So interesting day. I will say that. Very interesting day. So what I thought was interesting about the cross examination there, I thought there were some interesting points made. One of which was the idea that the defense began the process of discrediting the idea that she would have been able to get the body to the burn pit. And essentially what the defense was doing was showing that she had no way to get it there other than carry it. So there was no evidence it was dragged because there was no blood on the hill going down where they would have found it. They saw no signs of blood or any indication that she would have been dragging that from the house to the burn pit. The Kubota RTV, no blood on it. The tractor had a few drops, but nothing substantial enough to indicate a body would have been put on it. So this leaves the jury with the idea of how does she get it down there? And again, that's gonna be the doubt. So you can see here, I have the reasonable doubt chart up here. Those points are going to, right over here on this chart. Those are the points. Again, even if you get all the way to the top step, if there's a doubt, and one of the areas of doubt would be, how did she get the body from the house, if that's where it happened or wherever this shooting occurred, to the burn pile? And that's one of the things that the defense is going to argue here and say, listen, somebody else had to have done that. Maybe she knew the body was in the burn pile. Maybe she encountered it. But if she wasn't the one that killed him, if she wasn't the one that put him there, then again, and she's not being accused of somehow assisting with that or covering something up, then she's not guilty of malice murder, which is what she's charged with. So, this is important stuff. The other thing that came out right at the end there, and we'll see where this goes tomorrow when he continues his cross-examination, is, he was outright accusing this crime scene investigator of manipulating evidence and manipulating the picture of that towel to suggest, I guess, that towel was used in the cleanup. So, essentially, we didn't get to really see the different pictures he was showing at that particular moment, but I assume we will tomorrow. He was saying On the one picture here, you have this towel. It's not them. It's not demonstrating there's blood. Now all of a sudden, you take it to a different part of the lab where you claim you have to manipulate it due to the lighting, and lo and behold, it reacts. Again, I have this chart up here. Where are we at here? I think this way. No, that way. This chart up over here to demonstrate to you. Look, this is what they're going after. They don't have to prove she's innocent. They just have to prove there's a reasonable doubt. Or better yet, somewhere along this line, this step, do they get to step? If they're anywhere along that staircase when they're left, because there's doubts, because they feel like there's not enough evidence to prove she absolutely did this, you're at not guilty. So, like I said, these attorneys are good. I like the defense attorneys. They're very thorough. You've got to listen when you're listening to cross examinations, because what they're doing is when they're crossing these witnesses, they're eliciting information that is going to end up in the closing arguments, and they're going to use that to argue it as reasonable doubt later on, or as a reason to say, hey, the state hasn't met its burden. And if they can create confusion, if they can create issues with the evidence, if they can create disputes within the evidence, remember, because of the presumption of innocence, it breaks in the favor of the defendant. So that's what you're seeing going on here. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, it's going to come down to how that jury feels the state sets up the evidence in this case in regards to establishing how they say this happened. And then, of course, there's going to be, okay, here is a smoking gun. We have this recording where she said, or not, I guess it's not a recording, where we have this witness who says, she told me that he was in the burn pile, which, again, what they're trying to do with that is box her in to say nobody else was on the property at the time that he would have passed away. She's the only one there. She tells her lover that he's in the burn pile. And then on top of that, she bolsters that to be an incriminating statement when she tells him after she's incarcerated, hey, you're going to hang me if you keep talking about that stuff, if you keep talking about what you're talking about. And that's it. So it's a relatively weak case. And again, it's why over here, it's why I keep putting up this chart, because this chart right here is what the defense is going after. It's why they showed it in their opening statement. That's why they're going to show it again in their closing. And it's why you have to start evaluating the case. Where are you on this chart? Where do you feel the defense is on, where do you feel the state is? How far up this staircase are they in proving their case? And right now, I think that they're probably in the middle, but they got to go all the way up the steps, and they're not there yet for me, definitely. And again, and I guess even right now, I mean, I haven't heard anything that ties her to this besides they're establishing what took place and what was found in the burn pit, and they're establishing that it wasn't an accident, that it was an intentional act, because they're showing now that he was found with the bullet in his rib cage. The other thing I think is funny too is you hear all these crime scene investigators talking about it, and he's like, I took this course, 300 hours. Well, if you look at 300 hours, that's like 37 days. 37 days, right? But you figure, what I always found interesting is you have, and again, I think it's interesting how the justice system is lined up this way. You have police officers who are not required to have a college education. They're not required to have a higher education degree or a specialized degree to be a police officer or an investigator. However, they are the ones collecting the evidence. They are the ones making determinations. They are the ones that are doing all the groundwork. And then they turn it over to lawyers, whether they're prosecutors or defense attorneys or judges, to then evaluate the work that they did. And these people are required to not just get a college degree, but they're required to go 3 years past that and get a specialized degree to analyze the work of someone who isn't even required to get a college degree to do what they're doing. And as you saw, They're simply going and getting something that requires 37 days of work, whereas multiply the amount of days that these attorneys who are analyzing the work of these people, and it's the work of these people who end up being in a position to take away someone's freedom. So I've never understood that. I think it should be, if you're going to be, obviously, if you're going to be maybe writing traffic tickets, maybe you don't necessarily need to have a specialized degree. But if you're going to be an investigator, where you're going to be investigating crimes, capital crimes that could take away someone's life in freedom for the rest of their life, you should have to have a degree commensurate or even better than the attorneys that are going to evaluate the work that you're doing. It's never made sense to me. And if we had better educated, better trained professionals at the ground level doing these investigations, it would alleviate a lot of the problems. And cases would probably, some cases would never get made, some would get made, but it would certainly allow for a better quality investigation. And that's what we should expect, especially if the result of that investigation results in a citizen's revocation of their freedom, and they become essentially, you have to understand this, the state, when the state levies a charge, they're taking custody of that person. The state now owns you. You are now state property. Every prisoner that's in the state prison is property of the state. And that's what the state is basically saying. We have a right to take you into custody, i.e., take ownership of you, and you're going to go and get housed in this facility, and you're never going to walk out again. So, I think it's always interesting when you get police officers on the stand or crime scene investigators, and you evaluate the level of training that they're getting, and again, some of them, they do have college degrees. I know a lot of police officers that nowadays who have gotten it because there is the ability to be paid more and to get opportunities to move up faster. But then there's some who don't, and they get certifications and they get training at the police academy, but it's still not the equivalence of what these attorneys are getting. And it should be, it should be, I think that should be a minimum requirement if you're going to be a police officer and have any ability to affect somebody's freedom. But that's my opinion. So, look, tomorrow we'll be back at it at 9 a.m. I'm glad I started the second stream because exactly what happened that I thought was going to happen. And let's see here. Let's see who all's in here. We got Hannah B. I don't know if you're still in there. I see. So she cleaned up the blood in the house, but just left the exact. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me either. That would indicate to me that something was going on here beyond, that was, I don't know. That's definitely a valid point to me that something doesn't make sense if she would do that. And then Jim here says the stats for criminal case convictions are 100% for a guilty or no contest and 94% for a not guilty plea. I don't know what that means, Jim, because it can't be 100% if there's 94% for not guilty. So that would mean 6% guilty, but I'm not sure what you're talking about there. And Anna, thank you for being here and watching. She says, thanks for your input, Steve. Much appreciated. And I'm with you on that point. Thank you. Yep. That's just how I feel. And I know my dad felt the same way. That was something that we always talked about. We thought that was a peculiar situation. So hold on a minute here. So, but with that said, guys, we'll be back tomorrow. So I don't know if I'll be in a position all day tomorrow. I've got some things that I've got to take care of. Unfortunately, my mom's dog was involved in an incident yesterday. He was attacked by another animal as she was walking in her neighborhood. We're going to be getting him from the vet. Finally, he had to have emergency surgery. And then I've got some things I know I've got errands I've got to run tomorrow. So tomorrow will probably be a mostly mobile day where I'll be trying to watch and keep track of the trial mobily. Also, we will be back with the Quentin Nixon case, so we will probably have a dual stream going on, provided that Quentin Nixon is going to be airing tomorrow. If it does, it'll air at 1 o'clock, and that's all contingent upon another trial that was going to be going on in the same courthouse. And if for some reason that one is not airing, then we will not see it. And I guess they said they'll come up with another day based on wherever that trial's at. So we'll see if that one comes back. That's a really interesting case because it's a pro se case. It's a bench trial. But we will have that one up and running tomorrow as well if it's back. And we'll go from there. Like I said, this one is going to be one that's going to be with us. So I guess, you can see the detail they're going into in this case. Again, I don't know what all of this has to do with proving her guilt or innocence. I feel like the state is trying to make this case seem more involved and more complicated than it is because they're so thin on actual evidence. So it's like, let's have a 3 or 4 week trial and get into all this other stuff. When reality is, it's really simple. It's like, do you believe that what she said to her lover? Do you believe she was talking about that she did this, or do you believe that maybe he got it wrong? Maybe he actually didn't hear it. Maybe he felt pressured by the police. And furthermore, do you believe what she was talking about, that she was saying that as in, like, hey, if you keep saying that about me, these officers are going to think, I did this when I didn't do anything. Because remember, she does say in that recording, I didn't do anything. I never said anything. I didn't do anything. And, again, without any corroboration of any of this, without any physical evidence to link her to this, without any motive, without any ability to get the body to the burn pile, is a jury going to sit here and say, yeah, that's enough? I don't know. Right now, if I'm a juror, I definitely haven't seen anything that's overcoming the presumption of innocence or meeting the state's burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But we're also only 2 days in. So anyways, with that said, guys, I appreciate you all watching. Hit the like button on your way out if you have not on this stream so we can get part 2 into the algorithm and get people to see this case. And we'll be back at it tomorrow, guys, as we take on day 3 here of what will be a couple of week trial. So we're going to be here. It'll be a fun trial, I think, to sit through. And you're going to be hearing more from me on this, definitely. And be on the lookout. We're going to be doing another Justice Watch live show soon to talk about Quentin Nixon, to talk about this case, to talk about Sarah Boone, to talk about the other news, Diddy. I mean, we're going to talk about that. There's lots going on with Diddy right now. It looks like the government's plan is unfolding exactly as they want it. So we're going to talk about all of that. So be on the lookout. I'll be dropping a time and a place for that. Come with your questions. Come ready to discuss. And until then, guys, let justice prevail. I'll talk to you soon, and I'll see you bright and early tomorrow for day 3.
The system's rigged, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down. Raise your voice, let's shake the town. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. United and free. Marching with a purpose. voice, we're taking it higher. Fighting through the struggle, igniting the fire. No more silence, we'll make the noise loud. Together in this battle, standing strong and proud. Injustice fades when courage aligns. Rise up together, break the confines. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. United and free. So rise up now, it's our time to shine. Together we'll write a new paradigm. You paradigm, you paradigm. Whoa, whoa. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. Rise up now, it's our time to shine. United and free. Together we'll write a new paradigm. United and free. United and free. United and free.